Hey everybody, how's it going? I am down here on Lake Guntersville. Just finished up one of my last tournaments of the season, and this one was pretty special because we had the opportunity to fish against two-time Bassmaster Classic champion Jordan Lee. That's right, the one and only Jordan Lee came out and participated in his very first kayak fishing tournament on Lake Guntersville. There were 118 people signed up for this. This was the Native Tournament of Titans. Pretty neat deal. I've been looking forward to this one for quite a while, even though Lake Guntersville has always had my number. I haven't ever felt like I've really had anything particularly figured out on this lake, and honestly, this tournament was no different. I had just a few days to kind of practice, try to figure something out. My first day, I went to one of my favorite areas down south on the lake and fished my strength, which is fishing those deeper grass edges, those drains and ditches, like 8 to 12 foot of water. And sure enough, I caught 2 4 to 6 pound fish and a few other smaller fish as well. So kind of like that. I went to another spot that I like up north and had a phenomenal topwater bite. On Friday, I went up there to check it. Basically was fishing a large open water frog with no hook on it, just kind of burning it, looking for blow-ups. And I got 8 or 9, and 3 or 4 of those were good, the fish that I was hoping to see. So my plan going into this thing was to go up to that northern spot, start the morning there, try to get a couple, 19, 20, 21, whatever inch fish, fill out maybe a quick limit, load up, drive an hour south, and grind in that deep grass where I know I can get those big bites. Another thing that we had to consider, Bro was hosting their big tournament on the exact same day as ours. So that meant you'd have 250 to 350 boats all fishing the mats. So I really was trying not to find a bite that was, one, dependent on current, because they never pull on Saturdays. So I try to avoid that at all costs. And 2, fishing the mats. The mats had been getting beat up all week, and Saturday would be even worse. So where I was fishing up north, you're gonna see in the video, it's kind of, it's mostly open water, big grass flats. I wasn't fishing the hollow body frog. I was fishing more of an open water style frog, buzz bait. So I didn't think that would see much pressure. So getting into day 1, we could start fishing at 6. This is a 10-hour long tournament. So let's go into my day 1. I ended up launching with one other person, and he was going to be fishing the same area I was. Normally, a lot of people get really frustrated when they're sharing a small area, but the way I look at it, you have to go into those situations and just tell yourself, I can fish this area better than anybody else. You kind of have to have that little bit of confidence going into it, or fishing an area with other competitors, which is just the reality of our sport, will tear you apart mentally. So I've got no problem sharing areas with people. Like I said, I always tell myself I'm just going to fish it better and I'm going to figure it out. We started there on this flat. There's a little bit of current up north, and let's go into that day 1 and kind of take a quick look and see how that went. All right, let's see what time it is. We're fishing in the dark for a little bit here. Good little breeze. Okay, so this is my first spot. I'm up in the river. Definitely some fish here, definitely some big fish here, but they've been getting pounded with this Spro tournament, so I'm gonna see what's up. Yep, good luck, buddy. Good luck. So I went through and marked some of this these thicker patches of milfoil. That's where I got getting my blow-ups. I'm gonna go try this frog map before these boats get here. Well, I was hoping to have a limit by now. So, as you can see, my topwater bite was completely gone. I mean, I had expected to get a limit in 30 minutes tops. I don't know what happened, to be honest. The conditions were almost exactly the same. It was actually a few degrees cooler, which I thought would have even made it better, but I didn't even get a blow up on topwater. It was really perplexing to me. The thing was, though, I knew those fish were still there. My bite had just changed. I ended up, you can look and see here, I had 5 or 6 rods per usual, and I was switching baits, trying to figure out how am I going to catch these fish. So I threw a variety of different things. Nothing seemed to work, and then I figured, you know what? Like I said, I know the fish are here. Let's slow way down, get back to basics, and pick this area apart. That's when I started kind of figuring something out. So I can barely see these clumps of milfoil coming out off of the surface, and that's where they were. That's where they were eating the ribbit frog yesterday. They're not eating that today, but I know they're still there. So I'm just fishing it a little different. Oh. That bite is really light. That almost felt like a brim just pecking it. I hate fishing like this, but I think they've seen a lot of that topwater stuff here lately. Well, that sucks. If I have to fish slow, that is not going to be very fun. Yesterday, the bite was so much better. I don't know what happened there. Weightless plastics for the win. Got 2 fish, a 17 and a 16 3/4, plus it broke off on, could have been a big bass, could have been a garg, who knows what it was. But so then I felt, okay, I've got something figured out. The fish are here. Let's try to fill out a limit here quick. That limit wasn't happening. I really didn't get a bite after that for a while. So that's where I was kind of thinking, gosh, do I load up right now, drive an hour south, and go fish where I know I can catch fish and probably some good fish? And then I kind of thought, there's one other slough up here I want to check out. And I had noticed the bass boats all in this north slough fished the first maybe 30 to 40 yards and then stopped. This is a giant slough. This thing is like a half mile long. And they had just fished the mouth of it, a couple of the mats, and left. There were pads way in the back, 2 sections of pads that no one had touched all day. So I ended up cruising all the way back there just to kind of see what was going on. And I pulled up to the first section of pads, wasn't really feeling it. I wasn't hearing a lot of action. I wasn't seeing anything. But I got back to that second group of pads, and the brim were popping left and right. And I saw 1 or 2 15, 16-inch bass blow up in the middle of this pad group. So what that told me is that this area of pads held a ton of fish. So I got up, started working the frog. Essentially, I was working it pretty fast just to kind of see if I could, get a blow up. I did. The problem was I missed a lot of fish. Let's go take a look at this. And I actually didn't include all of the fish I lost because it was kind of too painful to relive. Now, I don't think any of them were giants by any means, but the couple, you know, I definitely had a decent limit with this. I don't know what was happening. I couldn't catch them. It was frustrating. I knew that there were a ton of fish there. I mean, I threw the frog, I threw a buzzbait in there. I flipped the pads a little bit, and I just wasn't able to connect with these fish. Still sitting there with 2 fish in the late morning, not a super good feeling. Again, this is where I could have loaded up, kicked all the way back to the ramp, taken probably an hour and a half out of my fishing time, gone down south and fished my confidence, fished my strength. But I kind of started thinking a little bit. Lake Guntersville is one of those exceptional lakes that has an abundance of fish and a really healthy population of 4 to 6 pounders. With this lake, what I usually tell myself, you can about launch anywhere and you're within a few hundred yards of the winning bag. This lake, I think that's true. So what I decided to do, something that, you know, I'm not very confident in, is fishing pads and sticking with a small area and just basically figuring the fish out. So I decided to completely abandon my plan of going to that deep grass, which is my strength. And I told myself, I'm gonna stay there, I'm gonna milk it for all it's worth, and I'm gonna learn how to catch these fish in this area. By this time, the other guy that had launched with me hadn't caught anything, so he had packed up and he'd left. So it's just me back there. So I pulled out my spinner bait. These pads were in about 3 to 5 foot of water. I would actually flick it up on the edge of the pads, let it flutter down, and then I kind of slow roll it out of there. Surely enough, I started catching a ton of fish. I mean, just as I thought, those pads were loaded with fish. However, I was catching anywhere from 13 to 16 and a half inchers. I caught probably 15 of them. I just couldn't find that bigger bite. Flipped the edges of the pads a little bit. I flipped the guts of the pads a little bit, picked up a few more small fish, but I could not get a big bite. So I decided to move out of the pads, go to the very back of this slough. This was probably in 1 to 2 foot of water. The water in the slough was fairly stained, but when I stood up and with my polarized glasses, I could kind of see scattered thick clumps of milfoil. So what I had decided to do, we had a pretty good consistent wind. I picked up the buzzbait. I've got this big squeaky loud buzzbait that I put a big black open water frog on as a trailer, and I started pinpointing those little patches of milfoil. And what I would do, since it was pretty shallow water and that the milfoil came right up to the top, I would keep my rod tip up and almost feather that buzzbait on top of the milfoil. And that is how I started finding a slightly bigger bite. check it out. So I got a 17 3/4, a 17 1/4, a 17, 18 3/4 was my big fish there right at the end. And it was kind of neat because those fish, you know, this was such a small area. Those fish were in super shallow water, and every time I'd see just a little bit of a disturbance on the water, a bait flick, whatever it may be, I'd flick that buzzbait out there and I'd catch that fish. I know there was probably a big kicker fish in there. I just didn't get that bite. I fished clean the whole rest of the day, which is always something to be really thankful for. So I ended up with 87 3/4 inches for the day. Let's go and check out where that got me.
8th place by an inch with 87 3/4 inches, Nebraska, Christine Fisher.
Added another top 10 to my list, cashed another check, beat 110 people, including Jordan Lee. That's right, I beat Jordan Lee by a 1/4 of an inch. So, you know, I didn't set out in this tournament to beat him. I don't care if it's your local guy, a Bassmaster Classic champion. I go out there to fish the very best that I can, try to fish clean and be consistent, and I always try to learn something. And this tournament was no different. Overall, what I was happy to accomplish here was I stuck with a very small area where I knew there were fish, and I kind of, you know, was able to put together the puzzle pieces and figure it out and put together I think probably one of the best limits I could have in that area. And it was a good time on the Big G. I caught a ton of fish, got to see a lot of good friends from all over the country again. Of course, you know, meeting Jordan in person was great. That man is such a class act. He is such an incredible angler. And for him to pull out a 9th place finish against some of our very best kayak anglers in his first kayak tournament is incredibly impressive. There's a huge learning curve from going from a bass boat to a kayak. Again, a lot of fun. Just kind of goes to show, if you know there are fish in an area and you have confidence that there are good fish in that area, sometimes it pays to really just stick it out, stay there, and figure those fish out. Definitely something that I'm going to remember going forward to the next one. So my final tournament of the year, the elite 50 anglers that qualify for the Tournament of Champions, which is kind of like our Bassmaster Classic. That is on Lake Ouachita the first week of November. We'll be competing for a lot of money in that one, and like I said, it'll be against the very best. That will wrap up my tournament season this year. So I'm gonna go load my kayak up and spend the rest of the evening out on the water. So again, thanks for watching. Thank you, Native, for putting this tournament on, and huge thanks to Jordan Lee for coming out and hanging out with us. We'll catch you guys next time.